Hello, and thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective. Well, it sure seems like there's an app for that, doesn't there, when you consider how the mobile app industry continues to grow in both revenue and downloads. But if you're either launching an app for the first time or on a later iteration, what's the purpose of your app? Is it to sell features or do you use it to help solve problems? Better yet, have you even lined out a specific strategy? Rob Volk is the founder and CEO of Foxbox Digital, and he's a subject matter expert at building mobile apps and digital products. And on this episode, we'll discuss life as a techpreneur, the mobile app industry and where it's headed, why you should look at an app as an opportunity to answer problems for your customers and create better engagement, and the need to look at your strategy first before rushing to build. So let's tune in to hear what the Foxbox did say to what the Shark did say on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Rob, thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective. So what's your background? What's your career to date?
I love building software. I run a product development agency, and I got my start kind of doing some web consulting, and then grew from there. I did some consulting for some big enterprise companies, and then switched to startup mode, with which I realized I loved helping smaller companies a lot more. Yep.
So you went from New York to Denver to Chicago. Why the transition, and how did you settle on Chicago to start your company?
Yeah. So ended up in Colorado because we all love to ski, and I was part of a company, a big internet marketing company back then, and we moved to Colorado to bring the company together and to ski. And then I ended up in Chicago, where I met my co-founder of my last company, and so just kind of moved blindly to Chicago to go build a business.
Yeah. You like harsh weather in the winter, so
Yeah, so no one ever told me that.
Yeah.
I arrived in August and I was like, this place is amazing, and Chicago truly is. And then we had one of the worst winters on history,
Yeah.
and I was so mad.
pretty much skipped to spring. So
Yeah.
so you started this company. What is life as an entrepreneur like? I know you were CTO before in a few roles, but now that you're running the company, there's so many different people that are working as now as entrepreneurs, and it's fantastic. But I'm sure you're learning the hard way that it's also 80 hours of work, don't get to see your family as much, max out all your credit cards, do all the fun things that are not in the the glamorous brochure. But obviously you're looking for that light at the end of the tunnel that you'll probably hit because you're doing some good things with Foxbox. But what have you sort of learned through going through the entrepreneur's journey?
Yeah. So being a CTO, you get to focus just on tech, and that's really nice because you can focus. But being the founder, you have to do everything. So, now I am doing the 80-hour work weeks, and I have no social life anymore. I'm selling, meeting with clients, I'm meeting with recruits, and designing software. And it's just interesting though. I get to do so many different things throughout the day, and I love that. Like, I feel in flow, and I just kind of go with it. And I have a great support team to help me along the way.
Well, and that's being on a podcast, this is now the best way for you to be able to reach out to your family and say hi. You just send them a link to the show in case they want to know how you're doing. So
Absolutely.
what's
Hey,
sort of the
fam.
toughest yeah, what's sort of the toughest part of being a CEO that you found? Is it hiring people, or continuing to design the products and build out the company, or what VC funding? What's the toughest part for you?
The toughest part is it's a balancing act. So I run a product development agency, and so we have to have people in order to build products, but we have to have clients in order to pay the people. And so it's a chicken and egg problem. And so creating this business from nothing was really a struggle to balance that and to line up the people and then pull the trigger as soon as we got our first client. And then we just kind of grew that way and grew organically. VC is not a concern. We're not raising any money. We've always been
Good
profitable.
for you. Then let's sort of dive into the topic du jour. That's where your subject matter expertise is, though, especially is in building apps, mobile apps for iOS and Android. But where's the market now today? I mean, when you look at sort of the mobile app market, how mature is it with space? I know, if you think of it from a general user space, there are a lot of apps out there. It's somewhat of a crowded field, and you do see there's a lot of end users who are very particular about the space they take up on their phone. But for brands, it's still an amazing way to be able to connect with people. And there are a lot of billion-dollar brands who still don't have good apps out there. Where do you sort of see the market as a whole, for advertisers and brands and everybody else in between?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's a really crowded marketplace, and most of the apps on people's phones just go dormant, and
Yeah.
they're never used. And so
They go into a folder.
they do, and then you never open up that folder,
Exactly.
and yeah. And so there is that aspect of crowding, but there's also opportunity. And if you're a brand that has people that your customers interact with your brand every day or every week, well, that's a great opportunity to build an app and to really strengthen that connection that you have with them. I see some companies that might want to build an app without really a reason to do it,
Yeah.
and that's where you find apps in the graveyard.
So when you look at apps as well, where do you start seeing a lot of the brands that you work with? I know you work with a lot of good brands out there. Where are you seeing them really focus more of it with that customer interaction? Is it more on the sales cycle or more on the, thought leadership type cycle? Are you seeing more people trying to create sales through the apps now that we go forward, or is it more of just engagement with trying to pull them in closer to the brand with whatever thought leadership they may have to put out?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that well, from my perspective, we're seeing more with the engagement. So one of our clients is Home Chef, and
Sure.
they're a huge meal kit delivery service, and so they've leveraged their mobile app to build a stronger relationship with their customers, and they've actually found that their mobile users are worth significantly more than their web users.
Great
And
point.
the reason, yeah, and the reason is because you always have your phone around, and if I'm thinking about which meal do I order for next week, I could just pull out my phone and change that right on the fly. It's a lot easier than opening up your computer, your laptop to do that.
Yeah, that's a great point, because especially if you look at how we, a lot of us in the lead gen space think of lifetime value of a customer. The types of leads and customers that you bring in now through mobile versus desktop or some other form can really be
Hmm.
a differentiator as well, because of the level of engagement you can have with the most popular device that anybody owns, which is their phone. So what
Absolutely.
you brought up a great point earlier on strategy. I wish if you would kind of elaborate a little bit more on that, on what you're seeing with either successes or failures with companies that have a good mobile app strategy to it, because I've worked with a lot of brands over my career that where they've started pulling in different teams. You've got a democracy where you pull in people from all types. I mean, a mobile app touches on so many different pieces of the business, but you can also maybe sometimes spend too much on different initial intentions, if you will, than necessarily what the company strategy was. Because maybe you're
Hmm.
with a mobile app, you're answering marketing, you're answering communications, customer service, IT primarily, and then that's all with the CEO or C-level suite of folks who want to see a mobile app really do that customer interaction and keep them as better customers going forward. But talk about strategy and your point of view on that with the brands that you've worked with, successes and failures.
Yeah, definitely. So I think to start that question, it shouldn't be what should my mobile app do? I think the question should be, should I build a mobile app, or why am I
Good
building a
point.
mobile app? And so I think what qualifies to go mobile, right, is it's about where your customers are, but more importantly, how often do they interact with you? So if you imagine ordering food from the Thai place down the street, if they had me download an app to install to order some pad Thai, I don't think I would do it. I'd rather call them up. But Grubhub allows me to order from anywhere, right? And so I'm much more likely to download Grubhub's app, and then two times a week I'll open it up and order delivery. So it's about those touch points. How often are they actually going to use this? If it's a one and done, don't build an app. Just have a mobile optimized website.
One study I'd read said that there were nearly 200 billion mobile app downloads in 2017. It's expected by 2022 something like 258 billion downloads
Wow.
will be coming of mobile apps. Sort of give us an idea of what types of apps are you seeing being built most often as far as complexity go. And I know you said more from an engagement standpoint, but kind of give us a glossary. I mean, there's so many different things you can do with an app, but what are some of the things if you're looking at improving your app or building out an app for the first time? What are some of the best practices you've seen with what people are putting in today into their apps that are really driving success for them?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I mean, why the types of apps I'm seeing, are around utilities, like utility apps. So let's say
Yeah.
payments. There's a lot of marketplace apps. A lot of entrepreneurs are coming to me to build a marketplace for this and that. So I mean, as far as just sort of best practices to for what to put in it, I mean, I think the biggest thing is to really invest in upfront design and proper planning, and even the biggest thing is talking to customers, talking to your real customers, and going through the customer development process. And the point of all that is, don't jump straight into development. You want to invest in planning and invest in design. And once you truly understand your customers' needs and the problem that you're solving, that's when you'll actually be able to build an app or build a product, whatever that is, to solve that problem.
What is the typical cycle that you're seeing with clients from start to end on getting an app implemented?
Yeah, well, across the board, I've seen that people expect us to just churn out an app in
Oh yeah,
like a number
and
of
the speed
weeks
that
to
you can
a couple
download
of
one.
months. Right, exactly, and that's just not really fair. If you want to build something that's a quality product and really solving the problem that you're setting out to solve, you need to invest in doing things the right way. And so, from anyone from a startup to a big company, we typically look at a 6 month development cycle for a brand new app. And in the beginning, that's going to start with planning process where we sit down, we whiteboard ideas, we really understand the problem we're solving. That goes into user experience design, where we'll come out with high fidelity prototypes. And then from there, we kind of go into 2 week planning cycles where every 2 weeks we kind of we figure out what we're going to build, we build it, and then as the development's going, the client can actually see how things are going. We'll bring in users pretty early on in the process. So start to finish, we try to ship the first version in month 4, and then we ship a couple iterations after that. And it's very key to get the first one out before you're done with the development cycle, because then you can get users' feedback in early. You can see what's working, what's not, and you can tweak and make adjustments, while you still have time and budget to do so.
Sure. I mean, this is the year of mobile as well. Every year's been the year of mobile for like the last several hundred years, but
Yep.
it seems like anyway. But one of the things that I'm really interested in is are the technologies really changing at a super pace as well? Because obviously, I think Pokemon Go was one of the things that with augmented reality really was an emergent example of the types of things that technologies could do. I mean, to the point where it became a nuisance and people were getting hurt, but it just
hmm
showed the capabilities that some of these apps can do. What are you sort of seeing in the technology realm? Maybe not as extreme as Pokemon, hopefully not, but what are you sort of seeing as far as technology, how that's starting to shape the oncoming changes with mobile app and app design?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs coming to me with ideas for marketplaces. So the underlying idea there is let's break down the traditional laws of business and just connect people direct peer to peer. So that could be around ClassPass is a great example where you have people buying single days at a gym membership instead of having to commit to a 30-day monthly package or a year long. Obviously you see with Uber and Lyft, right, where you can just get a ride anywhere, straight from individuals. But beyond the obvious, I'm seeing this even go into older industries like construction, and that's where I think it's really interesting. I mean, if you look at a really old business, an old school business like construction or insurance, health insurance, stuff like that, that's where you're going to see a lot of change because those are the laggard industries. They've been reluctant to change, and now they're really like embracing it, and they're diving into mobile, and they're figuring out how mobile can help their customers.
So, what are you seeing that are the pitfalls for a lot of brands and marketers and entrepreneurs that are starting up? Where are you seeing where they either go crazy or go wrong in their mobile app strategy and design and expectations? What are you seeing as sort of pitfalls to avoid?
Yeah, I think the pitfall to avoid is to not like basically in order for an app or a product to be successful, you have to be solving a real enough problem, and you have to create the right solution,
Thank
right?
you.
If the solution doesn't solve the problem,
Exactly.
then you don't have it. Of course, you have to have timing as well. And the third thing is the market needs to be big enough. So it's called the product market fit. So you need to have a real problem, the product that's actually solving the problem, and then a market that's big enough to make a sufficient business.
From a strategy standpoint, do you also see as part of that success factor just helping people achieve more reviews in the different app stores? Does that come up in question with you guys much?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, that's so in the app stores, obviously you need to have high rankings because that's your social proof. People are going to want to see that and make answer the question, should I waste my time in downloading this? It's also an opportunity to learn from your customers. Often for me, products that I love, I am actually the most critical of. And so, if you're seeing a bunch of negative comments about the same thing, it's probably from people who actually want to love you, but you're missing the mark in some way. So it's a great opportunity to learn from the people who are aggravated and leaving bad reviews, and then changing and improving your products.
With brands that have apps out there today, small or large, when they come to you for advice on things to either rebuild or improve or reintroduce their apps, it shows that they're more mature. They've already got an app out in the marketplace. What is it that you're typically seeing that they need to add today that's sort of in the marketplace that seems like more of a good fit for their customers? Is there anything you're sort of seeing as a common thread for those people that are, not at the beginning stage of building an app, but sort of at the medium stage of their maturity level?
Yeah, that's a great question. So at that stage, I think the biggest thing is so you've already convinced your users to download the app and install it and use it and kind of get engaged. So the next step is actually how do I keep them engaged? How do I keep them coming back? And the frequency, as much as possible, right? Daily is great, weekly is okay, and even more frequently is amazing. And so there's different strategies you can use through push notifications and other things, but you kind of need to think about what are those triggers that are going to get people to not only use it once but keep coming back to use it again. I read a good book called Hooked that went into this, and the whole circle is you have to start with providing people value, right? You start with the value. From there, you can ask them to make an investment in your app. So that could be, even like signing up. So if you imagine you download an app and instead of seeing the, hey, sign up now screen, let's actually provide you some value right away. Let's show you all the restaurants nearby or whatever. And then you can ask them to make an investment like signing up. And from there, then you need triggers to actually, come back to the app. So you have internal triggers and external triggers. And that could be, an external trigger could be, hey, I'm hungry, so let me open up Grubhub, right? That's the external trigger. An internal trigger is something that Grubhub is actually sending to me and having me come back to the app.
So most people come to you and do they typically have an idea of where they want to go with the app, and at least as far as the creative, and then allow you to sort of build out the technology? Or do you see a lot of companies come to you where they want you to build it out with additional level of specs? And the reason I ask that is that certain types of tech can be turnoffs for certain companies who might be more knowledgeable in one versus another. Not necessarily that they're experts in it, they just may be more familiar with it. But I'm always kind of curious, do they come to you with the creative aspect and allow you to build it out, and then you give them guidance on the technology to help support it? Or is it a little bit different to where they want to have a heavier footprint on the design and the technology?
Yeah, definitely. So most customers come to us with an idea, and they need a technical partner to go and build it for them. And something that we offer is it's a collaborative process. And so we like to start with that idea, but then work with the client to figure out how to best execute that to solve the problem that they're trying to solve.
Hmm.
So, sometimes clients will come to us with a laundry list of features, and features are great, but they may not solve the problem in the right way. And so, we like to work with the client to help guide them and really, define the actual product that we're going to create.
Yeah, everything you're saying is just hitting, really hitting home for me because it's something that marketers and brands have to stop doing is screaming features and
Right,
start
right.
trying to solve actual problems for customers. Then, generally, what can somebody look at from a pricing standpoint? What's typically, an affordable app to where you've seen really complex apps that have been really expensive? What are sort of the price ranges you've seen for things you've built out over time?
Yeah, that's a great question, and of course it varies across the board.
Sure.
I'd say that a typical mobile app, if you're talking about the mobile app and also the supporting backend API, which are like the servers that
Sure.
power it,
Sure.
you're looking at probably 100 to 300,000. Of course, there's always ongoing work that needs to happen as it's like a living thing, right? And so as soon as you have users out there, you're going to want to change it over time. And so it's kind of an ongoing. But for the initial build out, I would say 100 to 300,000. So if you're going full native, then that's going to be 100 to 300 for the iPhone app, and then about 80% of that for the Android app. And usually start with iPhone, but it's either way. And then you can go into cross-platform app development, which is something we specialize in. We do a lot of React Native app development, which gives one code base, and so you make one investment for both platforms,
Mm-hmm.
iOS and Android. Yeah, and then there's also some hybrid apps and that's a cheaper option where you'll get one code base for both iOS and Android, but it's actually more of a website that's like a web browser that's kind of put into an app format, so it doesn't really feel like an app.
Sure.
So we work with React Native, which really gives you the best of both worlds, where the app that you have is a full native experience, but just with JavaScript kind of code base powering it.
Well, as a developer, technology guy, what gets you more excited when you're building out an app today? Is it iOS or Android? Not necessarily from complexity to implement, but from
Hmm.
complexity to be able to one answer customers' problems. There are some tweaks and differences and nuances, but also where you sort of see the marketplace going forward as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, they're both important. You can't these days you can't just build an iOS app. You have to
Agreed.
build an iOS. You have to build for both platforms.
But
Um,
the technical nerd in you, that's in
yeah,
all of us that are technical nerds, what gets you more excited as a developer? What type of platform?
I mean, for a hands down iPhone,
Yeah.
it's just from a developer's point of view, it's a much easier experience to build for.
Yeah.
Android emulator is terrible, and
Fair.
so it's just really frustrating to develop and build an Android app from my perspective. And but and then from a marketer's perspective, I mean, although you do have to build both, and you want to think about who your audience is, because Android and iOS users have different profiles. You'll see a lot more iPhone owners in like urban cities, for instance, with younger users, and so you'll want to know who your audience is to really figure out where should I focus my time,
Hmm.
knowing that you have to focus everywhere, but you can't focus everywhere.
Good point. So where do you see the market going? What's when you look into your crystal ball and start thinking about things that either excite you or concern you? What are those? What should people start thinking about as what's next in the mobile app world?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, my ability to predict the future isn't the best,
Yeah.
but I mean, I kind of think that eventually, apps as we know it won't be around as much. If you think of the progression, we came from a big desktop then to a laptop, and now younger people don't even have laptops anymore, and now it's all phone. And then I could see the phone just going away, and now, right now you have Alexa, you have voice control, right? See that I think there's going to be a lot more of that, where you have this sort of just automated life where things are happening around you and you have to do as little as possible to make that happen.
your advice for marketers specifically. We've got a lot of marketers and advertisers that listen to this show. But what are the things that you want, not just specifically brands, but what do you want marketers and advertisers to hear from a mobile app designer that would help them come up with better apps? What's the expert's opinion on how they do a better job, you know, relying on somebody who's got the experience with it to come to you with looking at an app?
Yeah, I think the best way to answer that is to really trust the professionals, trust your team. If you're a marketer and you're working with a UX designer, UI designer, really trust their input for the design part of it. And then on the flip side, I think the designer should really trust the opinion of the marketer for what's going to work and what's going to sell. Mm-hmm. If you're a client and you're overly directing, kind of how things should be built, well, maybe it won't be built in the best way possible. So I guess my best advice there is just let the experts do what they do best.
Good point. So, Rob, you're not too far from the beautiful Lake Michigan. So I have to ask because of the name of the show. And I don't believe I've ever heard of a shark being in Lake Michigan, but what is your favorite kind of shark and why?
My favorite kind of shark and why?
You have to have a favorite.
Well, I guess it would be the nurse shark. And the reason is because it scared the crap out of me one time. I was scuba diving or snorkeling in the BVI's.
Yeah.
And I saw a nurse shark about 20 feet below me, just down on the ground. And nurse sharks look like
it's not a handsome shark. Yeah.
No, but they're sharks, and they're apparently not going to eat me. But when you're 20 feet away from it in the middle of the ocean by yourself, you think that is going to swallow you whole. And I came up and I go to my friends like, oh my God, there's a shark. And I'm screaming and flipping out. And they all start to swim towards me.
That's funny.
And I was like, okay, I guess I shouldn't be scared.
That's funny. So, well then, Rob, that's a good answer. Well, Rob, it's that special time of the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Number 1, Apple or Android?
Apple.
Number 2, the Shed Aquarium, close to the waters there in Chicago, or Millennium Park?
I'd have to say Millennium Park. They've got a beautiful amphitheater there. You just chill out, drink some wine, and listen to classical music.
I don't agree with you on that one. I'm just an aquarium nerd. Though the Shed Aquarium does not have a good selection of sharks. Number 3, Chicago White Sox or Chicago Cubs?
The Cubs.
Yeah. Number 4, being a CTO or being a CEO?
Honestly, being a CEO. I love being a CTO, but I'm done with it.
Yeah. Well, number 5, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Cornbread, no doubt.
No doubt. All right, so that's a good Midwest answer where there's plenty of corn as well. So, Rob, where can people find out more about you, learn more about your thought leadership in the company, and more?
Yeah, so you could check out my blog at foxbox.co/blog, where we talk about building mobile products and products in general.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Rob, for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
Great. Thanks so much, Shark.
So there was my conversation with Rob Volk, the founder and CEO of Foxbox Digital, and he's a subject matter expert at building mobile apps and digital products. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with him. First, you've got to have your strategy in place with mobile apps. Even in a crowded space, you should not build an app just to build an app. Build an app because you're trying to solve a problem for your customers. As Rob said, don't just jump into development. You want to invest in planning and invest in design. And once you truly understand your customers' needs and the problem that you're solving, that's when you'll actually be able to build an app or build a product, whatever that is, to solve that problem. Great point. Second, leverage your app to build a stronger relationship with your customers. Many advertisers are even finding that their mobile users are more valuable than their web users because of the engagement that they can create. Don't scream features, fix problems. Third, he brings up a great point about looking at the reviews in the App Store. It's another opportunity that you have to learn from your customers. He listens because the products he loves are often the ones that he criticizes the most. And I quote, if you're seeing a bunch of negative comments about the same thing, it's probably from people who actually want to love you, but you're missing the mark in some way. So it's a great opportunity to learn from the people who are aggravated and leaving bad reviews and then changing and improving your products. Such a great point. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you so much for your time and for letting me speak with you about another one of the many components that makes up marketing today. So use your podcast app of choice and make sure that you join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective. Shark out.